Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an absolutely adrenaline-pumping sequence of high-intensity parallel action where three desperate struggles violently collide. We're dissecting a total masterclass in tension from The Black Ship, exploring an intricately forged snare that completely fractures our protagonists, forcing them into brutal, isolated bloodbaths across a massive battle cruiser. Right off the bat, we're dropping straight into the life-or-death stakes of a meticulously planned ambush. Beg for your miserable life, beg for a quick death, beg for forgiveness. That quote perfectly captures the sheer cruelty and overwhelming odds our heroes are up against. This isn't just a tactical battle for a ship. It's deeply personal, and the enemy intends to completely break their spirits before extinguishing their lives. All right, let's jump into Section 1, the ship-wide snare. It's basically a synchronized nightmare. So how exactly did things go so wrong so fast? Well, tracking the timeline reveals these incredibly razor-thin margins. The countermeasure triggered simultaneously across the entire ship to instantly isolate our protagonists within a claustrophobic labyrinth. In less than a minute, literally less than 60 seconds, a stealthy boarding operation turned into a total nightmare. Blast door slammed shut, comms went completely dead, automated defenses woke up. It was a perfectly executed divide-and-conquer maneuver, forcing each pocket of resistance to fight their own private war. Moving on to Section 2, Engineering Deck Assault, facing down 18 guards. Down in the bowels of the ship, the Royal Marine Milcades and the Acanti technician Jincho hit an absolute brick wall of 18 heavily armed honor guards. What's amazing here is how this perfectly highlights their contrasting survival styles. On one side, you've got Milcades, who is just the embodiment of elegant physical dominance. He's a lethal blur, utilizing his Soul Snatcher handguns and ignited sword for flawless melee execution. Then, on the other side, Gincho operates in this manic frenzy of digital warfare. He's violently hacking systems, absorbing agonizing physical feedback that literally makes his beak smoke, all while screaming about turkey worms tearing through the enemy firewalls. It's a visceral symphony of physical and cyber warfare happening at the exact same time. Let's see how this actually plays out as a tactical breach. Through these rapid staccato steps, the duo absolutely dismantles the ambush. Gincho maps the room, Milcades tosses in a hacking device, Gincho fries the turrets, and then Milcades unleashes a terrifying masterclass in close-quarters combat. He's dodging plasma fire and moving with such precision until not a single guard is left standing. The big takeaway here is how seamless, symbiotic teamwork can turn a deadly 18-man choke point into a graveyard in mere seconds. That brings us to Section 3, Blood on the Bridge, focusing on Cynthia's brutal attack. While all that chaos unfolds on the engineering deck, Princess Cynthia Winfield is executing a brutal shock and awe campaign of her own. 28. That is how many prepared honor guards out of 40 are left missing limbs or dead in less than 20 seconds. She enters the bridge like a force of nature, just a red blur of motion that shatters enemy lines before they even touch their triggers, overwhelming a heavily prepared defensive perimeter almost entirely single-handedly. But, the real psychological turn actually happens after all that carnage. Instead of just surrendering to this overwhelming force, the sole uninjured survivor, the honor guard captain, sneers right from his chair. He drops this fatalistic taunt that completely reframes the bloodbath. He knows he's beaten physically, but he acts like he holds the winning hand. And that taunt sparks a terrifying realization for Cynthia. If they were always destined to lose the bridge, why trigger the trap so early? It suddenly hits her. This isn't a battle for control of the vessel at all. No, it's a blood-soaked stalling tactic to keep her locked down. It's a brilliant lesson in narrative stakes. Sometimes the enemy's objective isn't to win the room, but simply to buy time away from someone else. Which leads us to Section 4, the Jim ambush, and Wyatt's desperate fight. Because that's someone else they were stalling for, it's Wyatt Staples. He's been separated and lured alone into an empty gymnasium by Casimir's father, Andrew Ken. When you compare them head-to-head, it's a terrifying mismatch. We've got Wyatt's exhausted defiance, running on fumes with weak shields and just 2 standard handguns, fueled by the desperate need to protect his kidnapped family. Against him is Andrew Ken in pristine, high-tier power armor, wielding a plasma sword and 40 meticulously arranged throwing knives, driven entirely by bitter vengeance. Guys, this isn't a duel. It's an execution waiting to happen. Section 5, Unbroken Defiance, a truly brutal game of cat and mouse. What follows is, quite frankly, a deeply uncomfortable sequence where Andrew systematically dismantles Wyatt. The pacing of the story just slows down to this agonizing crawl as Wyatt is literally torn to pieces. First, a knife ruins his gun barrel. Then his wrist is pierced. His remaining weapon is cleanly sliced in half. Then, the true dismemberment begins. His right arm is severed, his legs are turned into pincushions, and finally, his right leg is brutally amputated just above the knee. The biofoam forcibly keeps him conscious through unimaginable agony. Now, Andrew demands tears and submission. But even while bleeding out, missing limbs, and staring death right in the face, Wyatt absolutely refuses to give his torturer even an ounce of satisfaction. Instead, he spits out this massive, grinning insult, striking directly at Andrew Ken's deepest insecurity, his cowardly son. What we really should take away from this is the sheer power of psychological resilience. Wyatt accepts he is going to die, but he absolutely refuses to do it on the enemy's terms. And that brings us to Section 6, a desperate convergence, a violent plot collision. Infuriated beyond all reason, Andrew draws a massive dagger to silence Wyatt for good. But precisely at that second, we hit a true momentum of structural convergence. You know, that explosive moment when distinct, parallel storylines decisively and violently collide. Having abandoned the bridge, Cynthia and Melquiades shatter through the gymnasium doors with such concussive force, it throws off Andrew's fatal strike by mere inches. Faced with the terrifying arrival of the Blood Rend herself, Andrew Ken's remaining guards are forced to physically drag their screaming commander away into the darkness, just to save his life. As Cynthia drops to her knees next to a fading, completely mutilated Wyatt, darkness starts to consume his vision. The immediate threat might be chased away, but we really have to ask ourselves, even though they survived this snare, how will these deep physical and mental scars alter the brutal war to come? Wyatt's survival hangs by a literal thread, and the cost of this victory is staggering. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.